topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Who is January Jones? She is not a young, beautiful, talented actress on Mad Men. She is not an older, gorgeous, exotic dancer from the Johnny Carson Show. She is an author, and she wrote Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, that reached #1 at Amazon.com. She is a reality TV golf personality with world high-stakes golf televised on HDNet. She is a humorist and winologist expert. She is your featured host today on January Jones Sharing Success Stories. So sit back, relax, and get ready to laugh and listen to Ms. Jones with her eclectic roster of guests as you learn life's lessons. These stories plus sharing equals success. Welcome, and remember, beware, because you are entering the no whining world of January Jones.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a terrific day. I'm January Jones, and I'd like to welcome you to our podcast today. As you can see, I'm wearing my light blue glitter cowboy hat, announcing a new brand. It is called Glitter Granny Gifts, and it's going to be at Amazon. I'll be doing affiliate marketing, and our website is set to open June 1st. I'll be launching all things glitter, you name it, canes, hats, jewelry, shoes, whatever glitters, we'll be selling it. Now for my listeners, let me ask you a question. Are you an optimistic person? Well, yeah, we all try to be, I'm sure. Tell me, are you feeling uncertain these days about the things that are going on in our world? Would you like to learn how to cope in a better way with these things? Tell me, have you ever wanted to be a revolutionary? Do you hope we can make this a better place, a better world for our children and our grandchildren? Tell me, have you ever heard of a book called Revolutionary Optimism: 7 Steps for Living as a Love-Centered Activist? If you can answer yes or maybe to any of those questions, then you are in the right place. And I'd like to welcome you to January Jones Sharing Senior Success. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our guests. But before I do that, go get yourself some cheese, some crackers, and wine. Sit back and relax, because we have a most interesting guest today. Actually, he's been on the show before, and I was so enchanted with him and his message that we've invited him to come back again. He wrote the book, Revolutionary Optimism. It's a practical handbook for anyone feeling anxiety about their life and the crises in this world today. He shows you step by step how to approach this problem and how to make this world a better place to live for you and yours. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show today, Dr. Paul Zeitz. Hi, Dr. Paul, how are you?
Hey, January. Thanks so much for having me back. It's great to see you again. I love the glitter.
Yeah, we're going to be helping. I hope to help all these seniors glitter and glow. I turned 80 this year, and I thought it was time that I do something for all the other seniors out there, and especially shopping marketplace is perfect because I love to shop.
You're so creative. I'm inspired.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm inspired by having you back on the show. And as I told you when I invited you back, that you have one of the most impressive media kits that I've ever had the chance to look at and consider for the show. Tricia does a great job, and I'm happy to have you back. Now, let's talk about, just give us a little background on where you were born and how your career started out.
Thank you. I was born in Philadelphia. My father owned a hoagie shop, which is like a sub sandwich, I think, as they
Yummy.
call it in most places. But in Philadelphia, we call it hoagies. And he owned a shop, and I grew up around the shop. And I went to college and studied biology, and then went on to medical school in Philadelphia and became a doctor. And then I decided to specialize and focus on preventive medicine. So I got my specialty training at Johns Hopkins University and my in Baltimore. And so that was where I really got involved in public health and preventive medicine, which is really health of the population. Instead of seeing patients one-on-one, I've spent my career looking at us as a group of people.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, what a big undertaking you've had. And so you went to medical school, then you went to more medical school. And how many years have you spent in school to get where you are today? Just curious.
Well, this is so long ago now. I went to college. Medical school was 8 years. And then my preventive medicine residency was like another 3 years, where I got a master's in public health and then 2 more years. So it was 11 years of higher education after high school.
Wow, what an undertaking. And I'm sure that you've had a lot of support from your family to help you along the way. And you are married and do have children. How long have you been married, may I ask?
Of course, yeah. I'm honored that my wife and I, Mindy, have been married. It'll be 33 years coming up soon. And that's been the greatest blessing of my life. We have 5 sons. We have 4 biological children, and we have 1 adopted son. And they're adults now. So I have grandchildren now, too. So I have 2 grandkids from my oldest son, Cletus. So, yeah, I have a full family life, and I feel it's a greatest gift and honor that I've had in my life to be a father and now a grandfather and watch these children become great people.
Oh, yeah. I feel the same way. We're 20 years ahead of you because we're coming up on 54.
Whoa!
And, and we have 4 kids and 7 grandkids, and they are just the joy. I always say your grandkids they're your reward for not killing your children. I said that a lot on the show. My fans have heard that before.
That's funny.
Okay, so how did your career affect your marriage? I mean, because you've moved around quite a bit.
Yeah, my wife and I were married. We had our first 3 children were in kind of rapid succession at the same time where I was launching my career in global health. So I was like traveling for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I even went on a 5-week trip, I remember back then.
Wow.
Even while we were dating, I was over in Africa for months at a time. And so it came to a point after our second kid where we had to make a choice. Either I had to go domestic and give up global health, and or we had to go to Africa, basically, because I had worked in Asia, Latin America, and then I really felt drawn and called to focus that phase of my career in sub-Saharan Africa, where the health conditions were the worst on the planet, where child death rates were the highest, and the HIV/AIDS pandemic was hitting in the most severe way. So we ended up moving. My wife was a nomadic wanderer as well, and so we took up the challenge to move our young family over to Zambia in Southern Africa back in 1996. We left with 3 kids and came back with 4. We adopted a Zambian young person, and he's been part of our family ever since. So.
Oh, wonderful! Before we went on the air, I shared with you that my friend had lived in Zambia too. So we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, I want to hear more about what it's like to actually live in Africa from Dr. Paul. And now we're going to talk about something that has been written for whiners. So if you are one or no one, this is the book for you.
Lately, there's a whining epidemic in our world. People are even whining about whining. Are you sick and tired of listening to everyone whining all the time? So was January Jones, the author of Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, that reached #1 at Amazon.com. Ms. Jones based her book on a survey of the top 10 things that people whine about at all ages and all stages of life. January is a success coach that can tell you how to help others. When you buy Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, you'll find out what people whine about and how to stop them from whining. This is the perfect gift book to give or get for any occasion. Thou Shalt Not Whine was voted the best gift to be given anonymously for those special people in your life. Ms. Jones is an internationally known author in the style of Irma Bombeck, specializing in housewife humor, with her book being published in Korea and China. You can find Thou Shalt Not Whine at Amazon.com.
Welcome back with Dr. Paul Zeitz. And before we took the break, we were talking about Africa. Share with us a few of your experiences and tell us what it was like to live in Zambia.
Yeah, so I was living in Zambia in the late 90s, and my wife and I had 3 young children at the time. So we were living what I call a kind of a neo-colonial life. We were there working on behalf of the U.S. government. I was working for the U.S. Agency for International Development, and my wife was the embassy physician doing clinical medicine. So we were both supporting U.S. government efforts there. And we had a very comfortable lifestyle. We had a nice house, and we had a lot of people helping out with the kids. So that was a great gift. And I was working in the country at the time, and I was drawn to go work there because the child survival challenges were amongst the greatest in all of Africa. The child death rates, the under 5 mortality rate, the under 1 mortality rate were extremely high from preventable causes. Like we could vaccinate more effectively. We could give treatment for diarrheal disease and pneumonia and simple vitamins, for example. Vitamin A was, there was a high rate of deficiency, and we could find a way to create the health system so it could deliver those really life-saving entities, life-saving solutions. So the poverty was immense. 80% of the people were living on less than $1 a day. So I spent a lot of time traveling out to the compounds and the communities and around the country to the districts and, visiting the health centers. It was really very sad. And it turned out that we didn't know this when we went, but when we got there, we realized that we were living there when the AIDS pandemic was accelerating, and young adults, 15 to 44, were the greatest impacted. And so all these young, healthy people would get very sick and then die. And it was a very tough time. I would go to the University Teaching Hospital, which is in the center of the capital, the best hospital in the country. And the Zambians called it the departure lounge because they knew it as a place where you would go to die. So I went on tours there, and I was like, there were no antibiotics. There were no rubber gloves. There were 2 or 3 patients to a bed, people sleeping on the floors in the hospital, 1 doctor for a ward of 50 or 70 people. It was really, the level of care was so deficient from what I had understood basic human rights, the right to medical care should be. It was shocking at times.
My gosh, that's interesting about the departure lounge room, because we're airline people. And when we talk about someone passing, we talk about them taking the flight west and flying west. So it's interesting how in different parts of the world, people have different ways of describing that. How long were you actually there with your family?
We were there for 4 years.
4 years.
I had an awakening of sorts. I was driving past that hospital I just mentioned one day, and I was going towards this intersection that I had traveled by many times. But this one day, right in front of me, there was a minivan at the side of the road. It had been there many times, but I hadn't really seen it. And it was a Christian Aid Youth Project. Christian Aid Youth Project. And guess what they were doing? They were selling coffins. And I saw it this one day. I pulled over and I wept because I was like,
yeah,
this was the epitome of a Holocaust, basically, the dying fields of Africa at the time when from HIV and AIDS in particular.
Yes.
And we had drugs and solutions in America and Europe and Japan, but the people in Africa did not have access to those life-saving AIDS medicines, the triple drug cocktail it was called. And I became an activist at that point. That's when I really said, I can't be aware of this and not take action to try to solve the problem.
So obviously that's where you came up with the fabulous title, Revolutionary Optimism. I now know what inspired you to write this book, and it's inspired your entire career. How long did it take for you to get this book put together and published and get your message out?
Yeah, well, I published my first book, Waging Justice, back in 2018. That was a memoir. And about 2 years ago, I realized that I was struggling over these years with anxiety and feeling despair about the state of our country and our world and all the challenges that we're facing. And so a couple years ago, 2022, actually, I realized that 2024, the year we're in now, was going to be a big year. It was going to be a challenging year. There was going to be a lot of difficult things going on in our world. So that was when I decided to put together this book, Revolutionary Optimism, 7 Steps for Living as a Love-Centered Activist. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual violence, and I've been had early childhood trauma. So I have been working my whole life to heal myself and to connect my own healing with the service that I do in the world. And I felt like at this time I was ready to share the best practices, the greatest hits, if you will, of how I have created my life, my journey of living as a love-centered activist, and to make it available to others. It's the book I wish I had when I was 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. And even you at 80, I hope that you'll find it also inspirational.
Yeah, well, your timing is totally perfect because what a year we're having. And then it just seems like every time we turn the news on, it's something new, something worse, so much controversy. It is a hard time when you're 80 or when you're 18 to figure out how you're going to get through this whole mess. And you came up with 7 steps, so it couldn't be more simpler. Could you just do an overview of those 7 steps, and then we can go into more detail?
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to make it simple. I wanted to make it fun too, and it's serious work though. So the first few steps, step 1, 2, and 3, are really about our self-fulfillment, our self-liberation. For us living as a revolutionary optimist, it's like figuring out how we want to serve. What is our soul's purpose? And how do we connect with a collective consciousness, meaning that we're not alone. We're in this together with all of humanity, actually. So, and then step 4 is the heart of the book. It's like where the life force of the book. It's called peace crafting. And it's about the relationship between myself and others. So like you and I are in a dialogue right now, or I'm in a dialogue with your listeners. So I came up with an approach called peace crafting, which I can go into more detail about that. That's how we relate to the other with respect and dignity and as listening friends and so forth. And then the last 3 steps of the book are 5, 6, and 7 are really focused on our collective liberation. It's about imagineering. What visions do we have for creating a better world? How do we build movements, love-centered movements? And then how do we spark peaceful revolutions? How do we use peaceful resistance to bring forward the change that we want? And how can we be unifying, like bringing ourselves together as people living here in the United States and globally, because the challenges are immense, and we need to unify as much as we can.
And that pretty much breaks it down into finding out where you are yourself first, and then reaching out to others. And after our show that we did before, we talked about talking to people like in the supermarket, and just, as you and I are doing now, and reaching out to people in your daily life. Give us some more examples of how people can actually reach out and make a difference.
Yeah, so the book starts with It's Go Time. And it's about starting right now, right today, with being aware that you're probably already a love-centered activist, actually. You're already taking love actions, and every action counts. And that includes self-love and caring for yourself, taking care of your well-being in whatever way you do that. It's the relationships that you're in, taking care of your children or your partner or your extended family or your community. And then the broader service that we do, like the service you do by offering great products and great books and great information. That's a form of love-centered service that you're doing. So I think that's really the first step. And then waking up every day and going, how can I serve? Which part of those options are you going to pursue? So I think it's really important. People often say, oh, well, you've done this, you've done that. I can't, my actions don't matter, right? Or I'm not having an impact. And I'm trying to address that up front. Like your actions do matter. Every love-centered action matters. And you already are doing enough and a lot. So take credit for it.
Yeah. And how I want to mention also that you published the book. So you're self-published. And how did that experience, writing the book and publishing and now promoting it, how did that affect your life?
It was great. I made a commitment that one way that I could serve others was to get this book out of me. And so I felt like it was the revolutionary optimism spirit within me. I had to get it out. And you have to have that kind of zest when you're trying to write a book, especially self-publishing a book. You have to feel really clear that this is something you want to offer to others. And I was able to bring together a fantastic writing team with editors and researchers and partners who helped make the book really great, better than I could have done myself. It was really a collective team that formed, and now it's out there. So I feel like I'm like the mother of it. I gave birth to it, and I'm nurturing it.
Okay. I hear you. Speaking of books, 30 years ago, I did the same thing. And I tried to answer my theory of who killed Kennedy.
Let me ask you a question. Are you still wondering who killed Kennedy? Over 50 years later, the assassination is still a mystery. It is unfinished business for our country. Now, get ready for a theory that you've never heard before, but will make more sense than any other conspiracy theory that you've ever heard in the past. January Jones speaks the unspeakable in her book, Jackie, Ari, and Jack, The Tragic Love Triangle, connecting Jackie and Aristotle Onassis romantically prior to JFK's assassination. Did you know that Ari was Jackie's guest in the White House during the JFK funeral? He was the only non-family member who was invited by Jackie to stay there during the funeral. Aristotle Onassis was one of the wealthiest men in the world, with the means, the motive, and the money to order an assassination that was the perfect crime of the last century. Ari needed class, and Jackie needed cash. They were perfect for each other. Now, what is Camelot? It is but another tragic love triangle. Jackie, Ari, and Jack is available at JanuaryJones.com, Amazon.com, and audiobooks.com, read by Ms. Jones.
Welcome back with Dr. Paul Zeitz. And his book, Revolutionary Optimism, is an amazing book. Paul, would you share with our listeners how they can get the book and tell them how to go to your website?
Thank you so much. Yes, please go to www.revolutionaryoptimism.com. There you can click through to Amazon to buy the book, and then you can sign up and you get a free Changemakers Companion Kit, which is part of my effort to try to support you in your journey of revolutionary optimism. I've also published a journal and workbook, which is a guide for you to take notes and explore the practices that are in the book. There's 23 practices, or prescriptions, I call them, where you can explore ways of becoming a revolutionary optimist. And it also, I really recommend that you do it with a group. And this book also has guiding questions for group discussion.
Wow, what a great suggestion, because I know a lot of our listeners are in senior book clubs. And your book would be incredible because you could follow through and have projects and create a lot of activity, which you need to do as you get older. And this year is an election year. So how does optimism apply to our democracy? Because we want to have a robust democracy. And you have some pretty good ideas.
Thank you. Yeah, so as part of my work, I've also launched something called #UnifyMovements, which is a movement building platform. As I've been walking the path of love, and which is really the essence of revolutionary optimism, where we ask the question with everything we do: how could you put love in the center of every step, every word, every action? I started asking the question, what would it look like if we put love at the center of our social, economic, and political systems? What if we organized our whole society with a love lens and a love focus? And that would be a very different way of organizing than we're currently organized. So, our election, there's a lot at stake. And, I'm a strong believer in interpartisan movement building. So I'm an independent myself. I work with Democrats, Republicans, independents. I do believe that no one party or one person has all the solutions. We need to unify and bring together the brightest and the best ideas. I think most Americans agree on most of the solutions we'd like to see. And we just want to advance a new social and political movement that can really get at the root cause of our problem. And so I'm advocating for constitutional renewal, a set of constitutional amendments, or maybe rewriting the whole thing even, so that we could, create ourselves as a more loving, compassionate society, and we could solve the complex challenges that we're facing. I mean, our whole country is founded on this concept of e pluribus unum, like come together. Right. So we need to counter the fear and the division and the polarization that we're all experiencing. And it feels unstable. It feels alarming. And it fuels this anxiety and hopelessness that I talked about earlier with a new way of interacting with each other.
Oh, for sure. That would be wonderful. I could listen to you all day. And, so many times now I'm hearing people say with the upcoming election, of course, being a senior, they say both of these candidates are too old. And mostly, sometimes they say they don't like either one of them. And then the horrible, horrible thing I hear is, I don't think I'm even going to vote.
Oh.
Yeah,
that's alarming. We already have a major challenge with our democratic participation. Less than 50 or about 50% of eligible voters actually participate in any one election. So that means there's like 50% of people aren't even voting normally. Now, this election, I've heard the same thing where young people and elderly people of all ages are kind of fed up. They're tired of the, better of two evils, if you will. And they're looking for a different way forward. So I think it's going to be a tough choice. And I think people are going to have to sort that out, what they think is best for the country. And, I certainly believe in the rule of law. I do believe that we have to have rules for how we want to live together and cooperate together. So I'm like tacking towards people that generally believe in the rule of law as a basis for how our democracy functions. So I think that's a starting point. But I want to hear from everyone. I don't want to close out anyone from the possibility of doing peace crafting with them and connecting and learning what their perspectives are. I think there's a lot of trauma that people are dealing with in their lives, and they get caught up in cultish kinds of efforts that can fill a void in their lives. And I think revolutionary optimism is a way to really figure out what you really believe rather than believing what someone else believes.
Absolutely. I'd like to hear your thoughts, because when I was growing up, I remember that the political conventions, they were really an event. And it wasn't a situation where it was all pre-decided. I can remember we would go day to day watching the television, and each day there would be different nominations, there'd be votes, there'd be discussions about the platform. And it was incredibly educational.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a more active participatory democracy for those that were participating back then. And you're right. We have totally lost that kind of what people call deliberative democracy. It's been, this campaign, for example, was like a coronation ceremony for both candidates, actually. And it was like predetermined by the parties. And then they had these primaries. In some states, the Democratic Party, for example, blocked all other candidates from even competing against the sitting president. As if it was like inevitable that the sitting president would be the nominee. But we know that even in recent history, like Lyndon Johnson pulled out, during the campaign year. Harry Truman also pulled out during the campaign year. So Democratic presidents with the Democratic Party didn't end up nominating them, and same on the Republican side. So it's been it's a disturbing thing. We've been calling for, my colleagues and I have been calling for an open Democratic convention where all candidates could compete, and get rid of this coronation thing, and that would like change democracy in America. It would shock the country, shock the world, and I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it's still possible.
I read it. It's interesting. I read an editorial today on just that topic. And I think it would give the energy to everyone. And it would be like, and I'm all for bringing in young, new people. And I'm all for term limits at 2, which is probably never going to happen. But to have
say never, right? Okay. That's where revolutionary optimism comes in. And I just want to offer this as a, there are ways to build love-centered movements to transform the way things operate. We shouldn't assume that term limits is off the table. It should be on the table as a reform, as a healing for the way forward. I agree with you. Yeah. So it's possible.
Well, I know you've got a tough road to hoe here in this country, but we're going to take a break and hear about some priceless personalities like Dr. Paul, who have been on my show. And when we come back, I want to talk to you about the difficulty in doing this in Europe, worldwide, and some of your thoughts on NATO. We'll be right back.
Have you ever met someone who was unforgettable? Someone who has touched your heart and soul? People who have faced difficult problems? People who have struggled to find solutions? People who fearlessly shared their stories. People who have not only informed you, but inspired you. People who have priceless personalities. I have been fortunate to host an internet radio talk show called January Jones Sharing Success Stories, and it has been my privilege to interview hundreds of guests. My guests have shared their stories, their struggles, their secrets, and their successes in their own words. In this book, we're talking about people dealing with problems such as incest, molestation, runaway kids, child abuse, drug abuse, polygamy, unemployment, scandal, and starting over. Then there are my guests dealing with difficult physical struggles such as blindness, cancer, and birth defects that are beyond traumatic. My guests have all been exciting, eclectic, and energizing. They have amazed, amused, and even astonished me. I have adored getting to meet them, and I adore sharing them with you.
Attention all listeners. Priceless Personalities, Success Stories Shared by January Jones, Volume 2 is now available at Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle editions. You'll be able to meet 10 amazing people who will be sharing their own personal stories with all their struggles, successes, and solutions, sprinkled with lots of humor and hope. Priceless Personalities features a teenager who becomes one of the famous Supremes from Motown, a nurse who as a humorist helps people to heal, an inspiring laughter yoga instructor, a mother dealing with the loss of a child, an incredible motivational speaker, a woman who married 5 times, a gifted paranormal nurse, a wise economist, a funny female humorist, along with an older man sharing his sweet childhood in the Deep South. January's guests are all amazing and amusing. You will never forget meeting them. Go to Amazon.com for your own priceless experience.
Welcome back with Dr. Paul. Before we had our break, we were talking about this movement and how difficult it is to integrate it into this country. But then you're also faced with the situation of worldwide depression, basically. And what are your thoughts on that? And also give us your read on the situation with NATO and these wars that are taking place in other countries right now.
Yeah, thank you. Tough. Thanks for the easy, throwing me easy questions. I appreciate that.
Right.
Yeah, so I think democracy is very fragile. As we know, the United States is dealing with, how is our democracy going to fare even this year and the coming year? Will the rule of law hold or won't it? And how will that evolve? But that same phenomena, the rise of nationalism, populism, and even fascism is rising in Europe as well. The democracies are very fragile. I was very surprised. I worked in Germany during 2022 quite a bit. I was there many times, and the whole QAnon phenomena, for example, had spread to Germany as well. And so there was a big movement that was like trying to tear down their democratic government in the country of Germany. And, I think that, President Trump really challenged NATO during his presidency and really wanted other European countries to step up to the plate and invest properly. I mean, I think that was a legitimate approach that he led at that time. But he also then undermined the positive effects of NATO, which I think is really dangerous because we're seeing the rise of Russia. We're seeing China and Russia coming together. The Ukraine war has been going on now for a couple of years. We've spent billions and billions of dollars. It looks like Russia is still superior and could dominate that environment. And many Europeans that I spoke to believe that Russia may not stop at the Ukraine border. It might go into other countries, even in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe. So I think we're in a very dangerous time in Europe. It's been relatively stable since World War II, and it's volatile now, I would say.
Right.
And same with Israel-Palestine. The whole war going on there has also been quite intense effect globally.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And that has just been affecting everyone because it was bad enough that we had the situation in Ukraine. And as you said, billions of dollars going there. And then now it's broken out again. And the Middle East situation is just something every administration has to deal with. And it's very frustrating, isn't it?
1542.
Yeah, I traveled to Israel, Palestine in April, just a few
Oh,
weeks ago, about a month
oh,
ago. I was there for 8 days. I was
wow.
there for the Passover holiday, which is the festival of liberation in the Jewish religion.
Uh-huh.
And I was there during that time. And I spent a lot of time meeting with Israelis and Palestinians that were working together to come up
Oh,
with peaceful solutions. And the situation is dire, I would
yeah.
say. I
Mhm.
don't mean to be whining.
No, not allowed.
I'm not whining. I'm just stating my experience of it.
Sure.
The trauma that people are living with. The
Mhm.
Israelis were hyper traumatized by the Hamas attack, the horrible, horrific brutality of
Right.
those 1,200 people that in that one day. And then, of course, the Iran attack, where 390 missiles and drones were shot at military targets, but also right to the heart of Jerusalem. And I
Yeah.
think that really was surprising to everyone there. And
Yeah.
so the sense of security, the sense that Israel would be a safe haven for the Jewish people, I think that idea is shattered now.
Yeah.
And then
Sadly.
on the other side, the Palestinians are witnessing what's going on in Gaza and the devastation that's being brought there, the famine, the thousands, close to 40,000 people at least, have been killed in the last
Mhm.
7 months. And now the Israeli government is also increasing violence and attacks on Palestinians living in the occupied West Bank. And
Yeah.
many people don't know that that's really gotten much worse in the last since October 7th.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Good news.
Yeah, look, I'm ready.
Yeah,
Anytime, anytime.
there's a lot of trauma to be healed there, and it's good to know that trauma can be healed.
Uh-huh.
And there are Israelis and Palestinians that are working together on a political movement to come up with a peaceful coexistence solution. There's a
Yeah.
group called A Land for All that I'm spending a lot of time with who have a new vision for peace, actually modeled after the European Union, 2 independent states and one confederation, one homeland confederation. And
Hmm.
they believe this is the formula to solve some of the intractable problems that have prevented a two-state solution in the past.
Wow.
So I left optimistically. We have a long road there too, but it's
Mhm.
possible that we could come out of this with a better solution.
Well, and I think it's wonderful for you to share that because I think it's incredibly good news to hear that they are working together. We don't hear that much.
Right.
All we hear is it's so dead end and everyone's angry and we hear there's no solution. We see people, politicians throwing up their hands. And when you're on the ground with the actual people who have to live it day by day, how encouraging to hear that there are ones out there really trying to make a difference. That's wonderful. That's very optimistic. Good news there.
Yeah. It was really it was inspiring, honestly, to
Good. Yeah,
see community
wonderful.
groups working together, like dealing with the daily struggles of getting food or getting transport, all those
Yeah.
things for daily life. Then the political movement that I described, then the visionaries coming up with a new vision for peace. So at all levels, that collaboration is happening. And it is an opportunity for us here in America to get behind some of those
Mm,
new
sure.
initiatives.
Yeah, and it's, most people, the term revolutionary is, for a lot of people, it's negative. And they don't want to have a revolution. Obviously, no one does. But to switch it over to optimism is an incredible idea, movement, and I commend you so much for doing what you can do. Before we close out, just briefly, we have short time. Touch on climate change, climate.
Yeah, I've been working intensively on the climate emergency. I think we're in a very dire situation, honestly. We're about on track to get to 2 degrees of warming Celsius, which is way hotter than humans have ever experienced. It's never been that warm while we've been around.
Right.
And so the good news is that we have the solutions. We can actually solve the climate emergency if we generate the political will, and we're willing to all change and get off fossil fuels and shift to renewable energy, and then start figuring out ways to remove the carbon that we've already pumped up in the atmosphere. There are ways that we could do that. We need political leadership that is going to really mobilize our entire society, our whole federal government, and all of our corporations and all of our citizens to get behind a really major effort to address this climate emergency. People are starting to feel it all over the country. Wow. And I think we have a chance now in the next few years to really turn it around. So I invite people to really consider this election being a critical determinant of how we'll fare. And that affects what will happen to our children and our grandchildren.
Yeah. And this election is important, dealing with democracy, the economy, immigration, climate. And you're right. This is the thing that our children should be jumping on top of, and seniors, everyone. We need to do everything we can to get some change going. It's time.
Absolutely. It's time to rise and to transform ourselves into a more just and peaceful way forward. Just quickly on the revolutionary thing, and then I'll stop. You talked about revolutionary, people don't want it. I think people think of the violent revolutions that are actually already underway, the wars, the violence on our streets, the mass incarceration. Right. I call these all the ongoing violent revolutions. And what I'm advocating for are a counter response of peaceful revolutions, of people rising for peace to counter the ongoing violent revolution. So I wanted to demystify the word revolution and link it to peaceful revolutions.
Oh, yeah. And you're right. This is something that's happening every day in the streets. One of the things that we tried to do since my last show with you is stay away from depressing negative news. And so we found this incredible TV show that we're watching, and it's from ages ago. It's called Monk, and it's been on for many years ago, and we're in season 3. And each season has 16 episodes. And there's 15 seasons.
Oh my God. Yeah, news holidays are key. Social media holidays are key. Yeah. Let your mind enjoy life too, right?
Oh, yeah. You have to take time out, and the bottom line is you have to laugh a lot and smile and have fun with this life we're given. Thank you so much for coming back. I always love having you with us. And thank you to the listeners for entering the No Whine Zone. Share our story with everyone you know. And remember, stop whining, start smiling like Dr. Paul and myself. And if that doesn't work, then you can start eating chocolate. Lots and lots of chocolate. Signing off from the Glitter Granny.
We want to thank you for listening to January Jones Sharing Success Stories. Always remember Ms. Jones' personal mantra, if you can think it, you can do it. That's what all of our guests have done with their lives, and so can you. You are the ultimate success coach in your own life. All you need to do will be to start sharing your own story with your family and friends. We hope that our guest stories will encourage you to explore an equation in your future that will combine your creativity plus connecting with others will enable you to be successful too. Always remember, your passion plus your purpose will equal prosperity as you explore the wonderful world of January Jones.